Translated from Russian by Christina Steiger. Ai Weiwei's Owls. A rectangular banner hung on the circular exhibition hall. Frida walked up and had a look. The words, "You are here," printed on it in decisive orange marker, gave her hope. Not Frida, of course, but Rita. By not articulating her R's the American way, she threw off and simultaneously scared off anyone wanting to get acquainted. To the question, "Arita?" she replied, "Yes," all the more quickly to disengage. And even when they verified, "So it's Frida," she nodded. She acquiesced to any name. Bending myopically and scoliotically, she read, "Playground 4, Natural Materials, Fun Children's Activities." Then, the first letter of her name fluctuating, she walked for a long time past crumbling structures under permanent repair, past houses of interdeterminate colors, where the areas in need of touching up were circled in light blue, past tractors that were out of date and even out of place on Sunday, past locked portable toilets, past a pale gray four-story building with the fire stairs turned away at the third. Suffering from topographical cretinism, she turned her attention to a sign on the door, "Grounds Police," a signpost pointing back, right by the road, easy for the old folks. The sun blazed down. Her son and daughter shuffled along in tow. The unsociable Frida wanted them to learn to play with other children. There was a pile of cones and brushwood in the clearing under the numeral 4. The girls were weaving things out of sage grass. The boys were holding up an unsteady table fashioned out of a stump and trimmed aspen branches. Frida's little son and daughter didn't know what to amuse themselves with. They stood over beside their unfamiliar peers. The latter were digging in the sand. When they were done, they took out their lunches, sandwiches with bits of earth, a white bun pressed into a black hole with the heel of a shoe. There was a man with a bare pate close by, talking about himself. "I'm a cavalryman," he explained to some women who were rubbing lotion onto their reddening shoulders. A little boy in a stained and soggy t-shirt who plopped down beside his mother sat drinking out of a flask she'd handed him. The rest were climbing posts and rocks, like ants. "My head hurts," the mother replied, "but you are so proud of yourself. Look at all you built." Her son repeated, "But my head hurts so much." Again, the mother said, "You've accomplished so much today, and now sit in the shade for a while and rest." The boys had finally stayed at the table. They barely turned their attention from their woodworking to the rocks. Then it fell over again. The girls improvised a hut. They all crammed into it, knocking the curved branches off the roof. In keeping with the adults' plan, the children were learning to commune with nature. Nobody was looking up. After adjusting the bucket hat on her son's head, Frida noticed a pair of senior citizens holding a map. They walked straight up to the playground. Myopically and sclerotically studying their guidebook, the old folks were trying to figure something out. After a brief discussion, they looked up, laughed, and continued on their way. Another pair of seniors walked up. These were wearing bucket hats, same as the children. Arita Frida raised her head. Up on the tall oak tree beneath which the man was telling the women all about the lives of horses and soldiers, there hung an array of vessels. They were reminiscent of ceramic circuit breakers, clay Google eyes of enormous proportions, gigantic floaters. By the time Frida Arita's eyes had made their way to the ninth and last bluish-white vessel, she was dizzy. Here is where the decisive orange marker would come in handy to stick into the ground and lean back against, as if it were staff. They were people who could draw arrows, directing others without a moment's hesitation. At the entrance to the park, she, too, had taken a guide to the unusual open-air exhibition, although she was afraid that because of the children's project, she wouldn't make it there. She took it out and immediately noticed a star beside the numeral 4, meaning that this very clearing where the children were getting to know shaggy, gnarly, and knotted nature was the site of an art exhibit. It was entitled "Hollows for Owls." Frida recalled an interview she recently read. The 55-year-old sculptor Ai Weiwei was saying how he'd never wanted children. He simply lived life, sculpting miscellaneous objects. But when his assistant accidentally became pregnant by him, he was supportive. Well, of course, have it, he told her. Owls, he said, are a unique symbol in China. They sleep with one eye slightly open, and everyone's afraid of them, whereas I revere them ever since my childhood. So I made these hollows for them, replicas of vessels typical to the Ming dynasty. Let them come. Frida surveyed the flax-haired children seated on the tree stump. She looked up at the vessels. Amid the living foliage, this ancient Chinese exotica looked as alien as a bare metal stand in a coronary artery. Wei had made an opening in the bottom of each of them. The owls would definitely be cozy in there, but they were nowhere inside. Hollows for owls, of which there were none. How is it that nobody gives a damn, Arita thought, that nobody in the clearing has raised his or her head and seen this remarkable oeuvre by the Chinese Warhol, an offbeat contemporary master? The sun blazed down. The vessels hung from the branches. The owls concealed themselves from human eyes. A few miles away, in a town named Colma, hidden away in a white sack deep down beneath the concrete and the reddish-black soil, with his shock of red hair and hundreds of unrealized dreams, lay Rita Frida's father, like a bright installation in a gloomy museum, like a hybrid of earth and plastic, in a coffin, padded with dusty violet felt. And now I'll read a piece in Russian. This is a piece that was printed in 11/11, thanks to Hugh. And I'll try to read it fast because I understand there are no Russians here in the audience, but just to have a flavor of it. Клаудио. Клаудио впервые пригласил гостя в дом. Клаудио было под 60, а дому было под 200. Мать Клаудио, приведшая жениха под родной кров, пережила мужа на 14 лет. И все 14 лет с замиранием сердца проходила мимо изгороди, у которой их свел Бог. Вспоминала. Потом и сестра Клаудио привела в дом мужа, мужчину. И вот, наконец, Клаудио привел в дом мужчину. Константина на пороге замешкался, снял листок, прилипший к ботинку. Клаудио сказал, что полы до малейшего пятнышка, до дыр теперь вымывают, так что трудов не стоило нагибаться. Полгода назад один из знакомцев Клаудио, спрошенный присматривать за домом зимою, закатил вечеринку. Вскоре газеты гудели. Голову Марка Куччи до сих пор не нашли. 2 моряка-иностранца признались содеянным. Весь дом был в крови, дом решили продать. Под пологом этой трагедии и отважился Клаудио привести Константина. Когда сели обедать, сестра не достала скатерть, которую обычно стелила гостям. В стирке, объясняя занозистый стол, глянула она на Константина приветливо. Доктор, муж ее, будто что-то почуяв, не произнес: «Будьте здоровы», отпил молча вино. Сестра не скрылась в спальне сразу же после еды, как по обыкновению делала раньше, а напрягшись сидела в столовой. Доктор пропал. Только Константина ничего не знал, ничего не заметил, прислушивался к тому, что происходило внутри. Несколько раз Клаудио доставал из косметички горстку разноцветных таблеток, наливал стаканчик воды, следил за кадыком Константина. Следующим летом Клаудио гостил в доме один. Дом никто не купил. Потенциальным покупателям, намекая на неосмотрительную вечеринку, соседи шептали: «Нечистое место, мертвяк». Знали бы, как дорога была Клаудио и его сестре изгородь, символичная зависть их рода, где родители встретились. Константина умер, отставший привычной в их кругу жестокой болезни. В некрологе, который Клаудио отдал газету, подводился итог. Инженер Константина в разводе, пел в хоре, после себя оставил 2 дочерей. Что-то было не так. Значительная часть жизни Константина из текста ушла. Его любовь, лебединая любовь, последняя песня «Солнце мое, я так люблю тебя, спасибо, что ты есть», испарилась. 3 дня назад во плоти, рядом с рукой Клаудио была рука Константина, а сейчас все, что было между ними, исчезло вместе с серой мелкой строкой. Козни бывшей жены Константина, исправленный черновик скорби, неполный список друзей, нонпарельная смерть. Клаудио еще раз нетвердыми глазами пробежал некролог, но своего имени там не нашел. Жизнь продолжалась. And now is the translation that is published in 1111, translation by Alex Segali. Now this is going to be in English. Claudio. It was the first time Claudio had invited a guest to the house. Claudio was going on 60 and the house on 200. Claudio's mother brought her groom into the ancestral home, had outlived her husband by 14 years. And for 14 years she walked, heartbroken, past the rail fence where God had brought them together, reminiscing. Then Claudio's sister brought home her husband, a man. And here, Claudio finally brought home a man. Constantina lingered on the doorstep, removed a leaf that had stuck to his shoe. Claudio said they scored the hell out of the floors these days, even the tiniest stains, so bending down was pointless. 6 months earlier, an acquaintance whom Claudio had asked to keep an eye on the house for the winter threw a party. Before long, the papers were buzzing. Marco Cucci's head remains to be found. 2 foreign seamen confessed to the crime. The whole house was splattered with blood. They decided to sell it. And under the shroud of this tragedy, Claudio had the courage to bring over Costantina. When they sat down to lunch, the sister didn't get out the tablecloth they usually spread for guests. In the wash, she said, explaining the splintering tabletop with a welcoming glance at Costantina. Her husband, the doctor, having sent something, skipped to your health and sipped the wine mutely. After the meal, the sister didn't rush off to her bedroom as always, but sat tensely in the dining room. The doctor disappeared. Only Costantina knew nothing, noticed nothing, listening instead to what was happening inside. Several times Claudio took a handful of different colored pills out of his toiletry bag, poured some water into a glass, and watched Constantina's Adam's apple. The following summer, Claudio visited the house alone. Nobody had voted. The neighbors, hinting at the reckless party, whispered, "Evil place, dead man," to any prospective buyers. They knew how precious the fence where their parents had met, the symbolic seedbed of their family, was to Claudio and his sister. Constantina had died of the terrible illness so common in their circles now. The obituary Claudio gave the newspaper was summarized thus: the engineer Constantina was divorced, sang in the choir, and is survived by 2 daughters. Something wasn't right. A considerable part of Constantino's life was missing from the text. His last love, his swan song, his song of songs, light of my love, I love you so, thank you for being, had vanished into thin air. 3 days earlier, Constantina's hand lay beside Claudius in the flesh, and now everything that had existed between them had disappeared, along with that fine gray line of text. The intrigues of Constantina's wife, the censored version of grief, the incomplete list of friends, death in brevier. Claudius' bewildered eyes skimmed the obituary once more, but didn't see his name. Life carried on. Thank you.